I am going to talk a little bit about digital transformation in that context of shared services. And I know that some of you work in shared services, some of you work with me in shared services and have done, so I was slightly disappointed to see you all here because you'll know what I'm saying, where it's straying from the truth. Not that I would do that. So very quickly at the beginning, I want to set in context, shared services and where I work. So I've worked at Westminster for 20 years. I'm a local government officer for 20 years, haven't moved around, which is terribly unambitious of me. 2011, we entered into a tri-borough partnership with Kensington and Chelsea and Hammersmith and Fulham. So between those three councils, about shade under 10,000 employees, 750,000 residents and so on. In 2011, a decision was taken in response to austerity, and at the time of Eric Pickles, if you remember him, I've got a nice photo of him coming up. We decided that it would actually save quite a lot of money if we collaborated on certain frontline services. So children's social care, adult social care, libraries, environmental services between Kensington and Hammersmith, because Westminster was far too important to share its services. The waste management, stuff like that around the House Department couldn't possibly share that. And corporate overheads, boring things like IT and ERP and HR and all that kind of stuff. That's what we agreed to share in 2011. And it was in that tri-borough context with those three councils. And there's a lovely picture of the guys sort of blinking in the sunlight. This is about it's later, sometime in 2011. There's Pickles. Those are the three leaders at the time of the three councils. And they were launching the proposal for Triborough Services, which was about, I think it was called Bold Ideas for Challenging Times or something like that. And it was quite new at that time, the shared service creation. And none of them are around anymore. Pickles, none of those leaders are around. The chief execs of the three councils that formed that partnership are not around anymore. And it hasn't been a bed of roses. It's been really hard, the partnership. It's been hard working in it. It's been hard for everybody involved in delivering services. It has had some benefits, but it's had quite a rocky history. And just to give some flavour of that, so partnership formed 2011, significant savings set aside for that. We created those shared services. We created those new heads of children's, adults, libraries across all three. And from an IT perspective, we thought, right, well, we'd better have a single system for these, shared services now. It's no good having all the three legacy ones. We'll put in a single system and so on. We also did some things like let a great big contract for a single ERP platform, a single, finance, HR, some people are talking about, across three councils. So taking three legacy finance systems, HR, payroll, procurement systems, and creating a single new system for all three councils, new chart of accounts, etc. And that went about as well as you can imagine it would go, which is absolutely appallingly badly. And that, because Westminster led on that had significant repercussions for the other two councils and continues to sour the partnership to this day. Similarly, we let a passenger transport contract. Some of the people in this room know a lot about that. That was a really difficult contract. Again, Westminster led on that. It created loads of issues. So we had issues like that. 2014, there was another set of local government elections. Hammersmith changed political complexion. That was now a Labour council working with two Conservative councils. On the one hand, who cares? We're about sharing services here. We can have a shared service delivering different policy outcomes. But unfortunately, because of these contracts, because a lot of the leaders who sort of created this partnership had moved on, it didn't really play out like that, and things started to get quite difficult. The new Hammersmith administration, for understandable reasons, arguably wanted a review. Lord Adonis led this review that was done for Hammersmith, and that found actually that the shared service had delivered some financial benefits, but they were pretty much the same benefits as other councils had achieved just by extracting efficiencies from ongoing transformation and change. And then, as the full impact of the managed services program and some of these other kind of shared projects began to hit the new administration in Hammersmith, they became less and less enamoured with the shared service partnership, so that as we stand today, Hammersmith have indicated that they don't want to participate in any further shared services. So we've still got all of those frontline services, children's, adults, libraries, they're all still shared. We've still got that shared ERP platform. But I think the appetite for Hammersmith in the current administration is not to share further. And it has been quite a challenge for us. For the shared IT service, as I said, we thought, right, how are we going to respond to this? You know, I was then the CIO of Westminster. You had the CIO of Kensington Hammersmith. We had to think about how we were going to start to pool systems. We had this ERP system, libraries, adults and children's social care, legal, etc. After several years, we hired a guy called Ed Garces, who some of you will know. He was the Triborough CIO. He has been for the last 2 years. He just got a role, started on the 4th of November in Camden, Islington, Haringey, which is the new Triborough service. And we in IT, at the time of Ed's departure, became then a 2+1 IT service. So we were no longer Triborough IT. We were actually me, which is Kensington and Westminster IT, and then a separate Hammersmith IT, which allows them to forge different partnerships and to provide shared IT services on a different basis with different partners. So that is the context of shared services. It is relevant when I talk to you about digital transformation, which I'm now going to do. And when I talk about digital transformation, I'm going to really talk about Westminster's digital transformation, but how that was enabled by IT and the shared IT service that was Triborough and is now Bimodal. So this is at very high level Westminster's digital transformation vision. It's about enabling connected communities, enhancing customer experience, reducing costs. They currently want to save £8 million over 2 years, and creating a digitally enabled workforce. And the first part of what I'm going to talk about is about actually Office 365, which some of you may well be using, but the role that that has had in moving us towards that digital workforce and enabling those connected communities. I'd be interested to know, is anyone using Office 365 at the moment? How many of us? Right, okay. Because I mean, as you'll see, it has been quite a transformational change for us across the Triborough. I'll talk about why we did it, what we've implemented, how we've implemented it, and the lessons learned. So we started out across the Triborough. Remember, we're all there 2013 or something like that, thinking, right, okay, we're coming to the end of all our Microsoft licensing agreements for Office and Word and Outlook and all that kind of stuff. We need to come up with a new way of doing this, and we need a common Office productivity platform. And people were starting to talk about collaboration, definitely focused on costs and things like that. So we did this kind of thing. We looked at Microsoft Office, we looked at Google Apps, we looked at an open source Office productivity suite across the different functional areas. And we looked really critically at the kind of cost comparison. How much would each of them cost? What was the optimum license model for that? And we settled on Office 365 actually as the cheaper, the better value option for the 3 councils. But at that time, we were just really thinking about technology and cost and replacing the existing license agreements that we had. At that time as well, we had a new chief exec in Westminster, a guy called Charlie Parker, who came down from Oldham. And he came down and wanted to drive a really fundamental organisational change. So again, totally separate from Office 365 at this point. He was saying, I've got a new set of values that we're going to apply in this organisation, and he calls them PACE. I'm sure we all have them in our organisation. His were about being productive, ambitious, collaborative and enterprising. And he embarked on this whole leadership development programme. We had a very significant set of restructures in the organisation to drive out a lot of cost. And the idea was that we create this flatter structure, this more autonomous structure, and we create within our staff an ability to act more autonomously, to be, to move from the parent-child relationship, for example, for us in IT, where the staff wait to be told by management or the staff wait to be given a bit of IT, to a much more sort of autonomous workforce who are empowered with the tools to really make a difference. So we had that new organisational culture, and then we had another really significant driver and a burning platform, if you like, which was our head office. If anyone knows Victoria Street, you might have seen City Hall opposite, I still call it Army and Navy, that's how long I've been there, but House of Fraser on Victoria Street. And up until quite recently, that was one horrible 70s concrete, block alongside a whole load of other horrible 70s concrete blocks. It doesn't really come out in this picture, but anyone who's walked down Victoria Street recently, or anywhere near Victoria, will have seen the whole thing has been completely refurbished. And Victoria Street is now a very funky kind of glass panel, And the only thing that still stands out like a massive sore thumb is Westminster City Hall. And there's a reason for that, which is that that's on an incredibly long lease at incredibly preferential rates. So we're not budging from it. But what we have worked out we're going to do at pre-Brexit commercial rent forecast, by the way, so I don't know if the business case is still going to stack up, but a multi-million-pound project to move out of that building, gut it, put all the funky glass panels on it and all that kind of intelligent building stuff, and then move back into half of it, where the other half is sublet on those commercial rents. So we've got a workforce now that they're not all in City Hall, but a very large proportion of them are. We've got to move out of City Hall. We've got to go into some decant locations which are fragmented around London, and then we've got to come back into a much smaller footprint. So all of the stuff that we've all been through before, going down from 1 desk per member of staff to 10 staff for every 7 desks, thinking about those cultures, working more agile, being able to have meetings from all over the place and to work from home and in the cafe and all that kind of stuff, all of that is driving change. So by luck rather than by design, these 3 things came together: the new organisational values, the technology around Office 365, and this huge burning platform around City Hall Decant. And we found actually that we had something that was greater than the sum of its parts. We launched new intranet. We launched the Office 365 platform really across all 3 councils in April 2016. We've nearly finished migrating 10,000 email accounts to it. And we've taken a sort of approach, which I'll show you in a minute, to promoting the features to support different sort of business cultural values. So we've got all of the tools in there, and I'll touch on some of them that anyone who's used Office 365 is aware of. We've got all the mobility that comes with that and the BYOD in terms of mobile devices and stuff like that. And then we've got Skype for Business as a way of collaborating and sharing and being more agile and communicative as teams. Anyone in a shared service context might be interested in this. That's 3 organisations' intranets that were on 3 separate platforms, all supported, now delivered through SharePoint Online in Office 365 with a common information architecture and template in one place. And now, Andrew here, you work in children's social care, right? So if you're working in children's social care, you will see a view that reflects your employing organisation. So if you're employed by Westminster, you see the Westminster intranet. But in there, there'll be a news story that relates to children's social care, and that is published once across all 3 of those platforms. So we can have, a single information architecture across all 3 sites. We can publish across all 3. In fact, we've got 3 audience types that we publish: employer, what building you're in, and what service you're in. We can publish content and target it to them. And what we wanted to do with this, and I think you see it a bit better in the next slide, I know you don't. What we wanted to do with it is bring the whole thing about the empowered workforce. We wanted to really make it self-service. So Yammer feeds are embedded in that. If people post stuff onto Yammer, most of you know what Yammer is, I imagine. It's the kind of internal social tool. That gets published right up on top of the intranet. So we're really trusting staff, allowing them to, put their mark right onto the intranet. And I think this next slide is about Yammer. We've seen really good adoption of Yammer. We nicked Camden's approach to Yammer, which is basically to have a whole load of videos promoting it, which talk about problem solving across boundaries. So you can create people, I don't know, maybe you've got experience of this, maybe it's bad, negative or positive. For us, it's been really quite positive, good. And we've, as we'll come to it in a minute, we've left it open so that if you're creating a new Yammer group, I don't know if there's an example here, but you can bring external users into it. So if you've got a group of people that are collaborating around, I don't know, the redevelopment of Victoria, then it's not just the council officers, it's also the land security staff, it's maybe the landlords of other people, it's going to be residents associations and things like that. And I'll come back to that because that really characterises Office 365. And that's had a really significant impact. And it has great advocacy as well. So our chief exec, Charlie Parker, I mentioned him before, he used to stand up and do meet the chief session. So once a month he'd go into a room like this and the same old staff would be there, the ones that are sycophantic and want to suck up to him or are going to, the bolshy ones who are going to ask the same questions, right? And he'd go to a session like that, it'd be the same old people, and they have the same conversation, isn't the IT awful, isn't the managed service program awful, it'd be the same thing. He has now started doing monthly, and this is a terrible term, anyone who knows it, yam jams, right? Isn't that awful? Yeah? But you get a totally different dynamic on that. So then there's an hour where he is receiving posts from a whole different set of people and responding to them in a different way. And it does change the feel of the organisation. He cares about it. I think it's, it's more than the sum of its parts, is what we're saying. I mentioned the organisational culture and the staff. So we don't, as an organisation, and lots of organisations, I think, we don't really put enough value into things like knowledge management. Where do people sit in the organisation? What projects are they working on? What skills do they have? What are they up to relative to what I'm doing? How do I find them? How do I find the work that they're doing? How does it affect me? So things like, this is a screenshot of Delve, and again, some of you guys will be using this already, and this will be of no interest at all, but we want to bring, this comes out of ERP, believe it or not, we can get this out of our ERP platform. So you've got the organisational structure coming out of there. It will default to your peers in here, so everyone that sits close to you in the organisational structure, you get to see their status and what they're doing. You get to see documents that you've used recently, but also the documents that your colleagues are working on that are published as well. And you start to bring the people in the organisation more to life than we have ever done before. And you can praise people through this, and you can put in the projects that you're working on and update them. And none of it is rocket science, but it does start to change the feel of the organisation. Another thing is groups. So when you started using Office 365 groups, this has been a huge investment area for Microsoft, those of us that know it. So they now have this groups capability. So our staff working in Westminster, Kensington, Hammersmith can say, I want to create a new group now. And they will create a group called, well, this is the Office 365 SharePoint Phase 2 project. But let's say it's that City Hall refurbishment group. And they'll add into that group users that sit externally and internally. They can put anyone into that group. So it could be about health and things like that. We'll come to information governance. It could be about case conferences and things like that. And then you get all of this stuff that just comes with the creation of a group. It's a few clicks, but you get the shared mailbox, so everybody can send and receive emails through that group. You get the shared notebook, the shared SharePoint library of all the documents that you're working on. You get stuff like this, which is a kind of, we'll come on to Agile in a minute, but this is about Agile working and sort of task management. So you can start to assign tasks to groups and things like that. So our special events team are using this when they have filming events in Westminster. They can start to bring the film companies into that for a specific scenario, and you can start to get that kind of collaboration of members internally and externally around all of that collateral, and you can do some basic task management. And that's all moving really fast. All of that technology is moving really fast and has a significant impact. Business intelligence, I was going to waffle on about. That's just a sample, so I'm not going to talk about that. But Power BI in there is a significant capability in terms of data visualization. So if any of you have got, as we had, business intelligence projects which have created significant data repositories, you've got your SQL analysis services or whatever, or integration services, you've got your OLAP cubes and everything set up, then visualizations through Power BI is cool and changes a lot. But what's cool about it is that you then get to collaborate with all those same groups and things like that. So the data is then available to the people that you want to make it available to very easily. So that's it. I sound like Microsoft salesman now, don't I? I shouldn't do it. That's not the intention at all. It's just that it was fortuitous that all of that happened at the same time. And remember, I'm thinking about the digital workforce. How do you shift the organisation so that it becomes that digital workforce, collaborating, natively using the technology? Information security is a huge issue with all of this. Information governance. How do you create a scenario where all of that amazing collaboration and mobile capability is available to exploit, but you also have the safeguards so that your most sensitive data is not in that world? And Kathy, that's something, obviously, that's an ongoing journey for us, and we've got more to do there. There's some amazing stuff you can do with data loss prevention, rights management and stuff like that, but it is a whole significant area that we are still finding our feet with. How it was promoted, all of this. I mentioned that, maybe I didn't mention yet, we started out this was an IT upgrade, so it was IT doing this. But because of these other dimensions, and uniquely in my long experience in working in local government, it became more than just an IT project. It was actually an OD project with IT and comms, and with great sponsorship from, the leadership of the organisation. And that's a really good place to be. So we didn't have to do this. The comms team came up with this idea of an agile working month, and you would have, I think it was August, everyone had to tick off on this bingo card the fact that they'd had a one-to-one using Word Online for the PMF, where they were both updating the PMF at the same time. They'd had a team meeting as a Skype meeting. They'd created a group for, or used, Planner for one of their projects or what have you. And we didn't have to do that in IT. That was the organisation doing that. This still makes me cringe, but this is kind of what the corporate comms focus groups came up with as a way of engaging their staff in Office 365. Andrew, you loved this, didn't you? I think I saw. But they have these different characters. So these characters relate to digital transformation and city hall refurbishment. There's one other which is Listen Grow, which is another site. And then you have this Max, this Office 365 character. It's terrible, isn't it, right? But this guy is an account on Yammer. He's an email. He's a cardboard cutout when you go to the staff sessions. And you ask Max if you've got a question about. And you ask Max on Yammer, and you hope that actually a whole load of sensible people will, the community will answer the question. But if not, Max, brackets, some IT person, will answer the question. But they come up with stuff like that. And actually, even though it is slightly cringeworthy, it's really nice in IT that the whole organisation is doing this stuff around your IT project, and that it's not just an IT project anymore. Comms like that, it's just reinforcing the point, really. This is where the organisation is going. So that's it, really, in terms of the digital workforce. I don't know how well I've done for time, but this is not just an IT upgrade, it's a shift in culture. A big challenge with all of this, once you're into the cloud, as some of you will know, is that the technology changes every day, and you can't keep up with it. Your staff will start using the tools before you know they've even been released. So what do you do about that? We have a real challenge in terms of keeping our staff up to speed. We have an even bigger challenge in terms of keeping ourselves, the IT team, up to speed, because we've got to govern this thing, and it is not trivial. Collaboration and advocacy is more useful than classroom training. So we used to, in IT, we all do bring everyone in, training session, this is how you use Excel and do pivot tables. You can't do that anymore. It's changing too quickly. So we took a lesson from the leadership development stuff, where you have people talking about challenges that they've encountered and sharing that experience in person, in a video that's posted up to the video channel in Office 365 or on Yammer, etc. And that we are finding is a much better way of keeping everyone up to speed. And the most important and difficult thing, that old-fashioned parent-child relationship where we provide the IT, the workforce uses it in the manner that we tell them and as we have trained them, that's really changed. And people got cross about it. And some very senior directors working with our chief exec were saying, what is this Yammer thing that's been rolled out? No one's told us how to use this. Well, it's a waste of time, isn't it? All my staff are just pissing around wasting time. And you have to change that culture. And the other thing is, no one's trained us. How can we use Yammer? Well, where's the training on this? I'm not going to use it. And that whole thing of, it being okay for staff and senior management to say, you've got to change that. It's not acceptable anymore. But it's fine if people don't want to use it. Of course, that's people's job is to run their operation to deliver the best service they can at the best value. But we have to support staff in setting a kind of a higher expectation across the board around our levels of technical literacy. Because only, and this I suppose is the fundamental premise, only when our workforce is really technically savvy and digital can we really be end-to-end process digital. And I am going to talk about this in a second. So future opportunities around this, external agencies, wider community access, third sector and customers into our internal operations, ecosystems, rubbish consulting term, but we do operate in these ecosystems in almost all of our services. It's not just about the council anymore, at least the council, third sector, private sector, etc. So you've got a tool now that you can use to cultivate that ecosystem. Power BI for visualizations, some really funky stuff. There's an online clothing agency that doesn't do job descriptions and adverts anymore. They publicise the collaborations that they're having internally and look for people that are interested in taking part in that conversation internally, which obviously you can do with these tools now, and then they start to identify who is likely to be a really good employee in a very much more flexible way. And we, our new director of HR is really keen to be more flexible. I don't know whether that's going anywhere. But the IT role changes completely in all of this, as we all know, with cloud. It's no longer about providing IT services, it's about helping people with the adoption and ensuring the compliance and sustainability of those services. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Hopefully that was of some interest. I don't know. The flip side of that then is, all right, so we spoke about connecting communities and the digital workforce. The other thing is about the customer experience. So what is the external customer experience, and how do we really reduce those costs? Because Office 365 doesn't reduce costs. It's a cost in itself, really. And the background at Westminster, there's some people here who know this background better than me, so I'm very mindful of that. But 2014, pretty good history for Westminster. We closed all our face-to-face contact centres. Face-to-face contact centre, one-stop shops we used to call them. Set up a single contact centre to deal with telephony transactions. Built, as we all have done, a lovely responsive website. But like a lot of councils that I see, and certainly the 3 councils that I work with, we still have a very vertical approach to service delivery. There's an awful lot of duplication across those verticals. We don't have this single view of the customer. In fact, we just talk constantly about whether we should have a single view of the customer. And the sort of end-to-end transformation with the customer at the heart of it is still frustratingly elusive. From a technology perspective, I don't know how much of you are in technology. Again, this is an awful consulting term, bimodal IT, right? We still have in local government big, slow-moving systems like iDocs Uniform or Civica or Revs and Bens or Social Care Framework you guys or maybe housing. These systems are not agile and flexible. They are definitely what we call mode 2 systems. They move at the rate of the slowest. It's a very stagnant market. In any of these verticals, you'll often have 3 or 4 vendors who've got kind of that market share sewn up. They don't want to lose any of those customers, so they aren't going to take a risk. They're going to have to move at the pace that the slowest of their customers can move at. And that really inhibits our ability to be transformational. We have the mode 1 stuff, the hair running, the CRM, the mobile apps, the web front end, all of that stuff that we can do in a much more agile way. But for a lot of the business process, the real transition, it still has to integrate into those back-end systems. And that is kind of a fundamental characteristic of most council digital programs in my experience, and certainly ours. And on all 3 digital programs, there are 3 separate digital programs. My role in IT is normally to rock up and apologise for our inability to deliver exactly the API that is needed with exactly the right characteristics to support the process maps that have been developed. So in that mode 1 space, we have come up with a reference architecture which talks about all this, and all councils again have this. This is the stuff we need to do to drive our digital transformation. So at the front end, we need to have a web content management system. We need to have a My Account capability. We need to have forms and online mapping and mobile apps and all that sort of stuff. And what we did was we looked for each of the councils at the number of different permutations we had of each of those capabilities. Someone here, My Account. We looked, for, let's take Westminster, we looked at My Account, we said, right, for waste service, what is the My Account capability there? And actually, there is a My Account capability. If you want to order commercial waste, you've got a My Account capability. If you want to report that waste has been dumped, you've got a separate account that you register for and log on there. Go to libraries, you've got the Cersei Dynix Libraries My Account capability. Confirm for highways management, a separate one. Orchard Housing, I think it's got a separate one. Social Care, People First, there's a separate, and across all of these sort of capabilities, you've got such a lot of duplication, reflecting again those core different line of business systems and the different capabilities. And then In my role, across the 3 councils, we looked at that across the 3, had that 3-dimensional view of all of those capabilities against that, and the complexity of it is incredible, you know, in just 3 councils. And what that means is you get a process model like that, which is about built environment in Westminster with all of those different integrations and components, which drives up cost and means that we're really slow to make change in this world. So in response to that, and it's not a great response, I was talking to you earlier, Jenny, it's not a great, but in response to all of that complexity and duplication, we have said we'll have a new way of doing Mode 1. And lots of councils, Enfield are doing this massively, aren't they, with Microsoft, and obviously lots of council digital transformation programs are doing that. We say we will put in place a single sort of default My Account capability, web forms capability, mobile apps capability. You know, we'll have that as our default, and wherever we can, we will utilise that to deliver these transformed services. But also in that Mode 1 space, happening at the same time, is the work that we're doing in children's category, for example, around FutureGov, reimagining that children's service, saying, let's put aside all our existing processes and the framework I system that we've got, and we'll start again from a blank sheet and see how we might deliver family services by stringing together apps that are there. And they did something similar in Australia. They really did disrupt that market in Australia, I think, and they came up with a Salesforce solution. We're doing stuff on BI and analytics. We're doing mobile working projects, and we've got these 3 websites in Drupal that we are transforming with as well. And on Mode 2, those big line of business systems for Westminster's transformation, we've got a massive procurement, 29 million per annum of revs and bends, parking, all of the contact centres now being, you know, re-procured as one solution, and print and fulfilment as well, all of that rolled into one massive procurement. And that doesn't sound very agile and transformational, does it? To just do one massive great procurement. That is the approach that's being taken. Westminster's got to save £8 million per annum, and it is traditionally Westminster to look to the market to provide those kind of savings. We're also doing things like iDoc. I don't know if anyone here uses iDocs, the uniform system in their local authority, but we are looking, when that contract comes to an end, for the 3 councils, we're talking to Camden as well, so maybe 4 councils, about what we could do to disrupt that market, like FutureGov are trying to do for children's, so that we don't have to be beholden to a single vendor who will move at the rate of the slowest. So that's a flavour of what Westminster is doing to transform digitally and to save some money. For us in IT, though, there's so much more interesting than all of that, which is that, but again, you've all done it, which is about the use of Agile, right? So we've been using Agile and Jira for a long time on Drupal, and actually it started a long time ago in Westminster, but we've really got reasonably good at it in terms of using Agile methodologies to deliver changes to Drupal. We're now extending that out across that much wider program. So that whole digital platform that I showed you, the implementation of that is being done as a set of user stories and epics in Jira with an in-house development team, working with the partner to do that. We have, we're trying to be like the GDS of the 3 councils. So we are having gateway reviews. We've got our design principles. We've got a DevOps team now in the new structure that went live on 3rd of October with architects in it and security guys. We're trying to do things, this is another consulting tech, we're trying to create cognitive diversity as well, right? So we're trying to have a good blend of different experiences in that Agile Delivery team so that it's not all old laggards from 20 years of local government like me. There are other thought processes, different genders, different ages, different sector experiences being brought to bear to the development here. Bringing the customer into it is critical. Using the data is critical. So that's really good. That's a really different way of working for IT, and having the product owner talking to us rather than talking to an army of business analysts or project managers sat in a transformation team is great. It feels really good. So that's that. I thought it's coming to the end now. You'll be pleased to know the timing looks all right. So, are we doing the right stuff with all of that? So I was lucky enough to be at Gartner's annual symposium. Was it last week? In Barcelona, right? And they do these amazing things where they talk about the future of technology and what are the predictions. And so you guys probably all know this, but this came as a shock. So by 2020, which is not very far away, 30% of all web browsing sessions will not involve a screen. So I think of what we're doing in terms of designing all these web pages and designing all the UX effort and customer experience effort that goes into designing web pages, and then along comes Siri and Alexa, and it has. I mean, those things can't read web pages at the moment, but they are getting to that stage. And are we thinking about chatbots on these council service sites? I don't think local government is really engaging with that. The vendors that we work with are engaging with those brilliantly well at the moment. 20% of brands will abandon their mobile apps by 2019. And we have a design principle, which is that we don't want to build mobile apps because the overhead is too great of trying to manage different code bases on different. I mean, it's different for internal, but for customers, HTML. You don't need to carry the overhead. And Gartner have some graph which shows the decline in mobile apps for most commercial organisations. They don't build iOS apps and Android apps anymore. And this thing about augmented reality, they're 100 million customers will shop in augmented reality. I'm not even sure I know what that means, but I mean, I've seen some pretty cool stuff with phones. We did a thing. You've probably all done it. Where you take all your GIS data and you use it to supplement, what you can see through a mobile phone. So you can see, you can look at a premise, see all that augmented reality. But where's that going for our on-street staff, but also for our customers? Is there some greater visibility we can involve in from that? That's just in there as a kind of roadblock. Is that really the future that we're going to? I don't know. We don't have any chatbots on our contact centre, so we're not going to be doing that. But that's what they say the future holds. And I also think, and I will end with this, these really long-term trends, for us working in local government, custodians of these great geographies, you've got these huge forces coming at us that we all think about in terms of digital transformation. But the Internet of Things, just in one council we got bay sensors on the street with their own network connectivity into a parking system. We've got smart lighting, which is using 3G connectivity for control of those. We've got CCTV, wireless CCTV cameras. We've got smart devices around social care and management of social care contractors. There is no strategy or architecture bringing that together. And then you layer onto that what the telcos want to do in terms of utilising our lamp columns and the rooftops and things like that to provide commercial services themselves. I think there's a whole opportunity out there now, never mind the huge growth that is going to happen in terms of sensors. Driverless cars, what does that mean for local government? Not much in the short term, but in the long term, this thing about extrapolations, what does it mean for the centre of a city when you have, in 20 years' time, a third of the number of cars parked as you do at the moment, because if you've got cars that people don't own, if they're cars that are just sort of services, you have far fewer cars. And I was hearing in Barcelona about these property investment companies that are buying cheap property beside really busy roads, because all the pollution and stuff like that, if you live on the North Cirque, that's not going to be the case in 20 years' time if they're all electric cars. So these kind of extrapolate, what does it mean for policy making and for our management of the city? Artificial intelligence, humour me here, right? There's a flight of fancy, but artificial intelligence, you see the projections of all the jobs that will be replaced by artificial intelligence around insurance actuaries and people doing analysis, fundamental lawyers and things like that, analysing case data and stuff like that, and how that will cease to be something that you need human beings doing. So what will human beings be doing in 20 years' time? And that's all the stuff about maybe the actual hands, what a computer can't replace in terms of social care, teaching, those kind of professions that are some of the lowest paid will become some of the more valued, higher paid roles. Smart materials and 3D printing, manufacturing, but also retail. What does all of that mean for the long term of retail? Blockchain, everybody talks about. I just wanted to end with this slide because I think it's, for us working in local government, I think it's such a time of change. I think it is a fantastic opportunity, and we have our digital workforce, we have our digital customer programs, but then we have that next stage of the future, which I think is quite an exciting, albeit a challenging place to be. That's it. Hopefully that was of some interest. That's a bit my beer now.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Ben. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't know what blockchain is.
Blockchain, again, you get all this at IT conferences at the moment. So blockchain is a trust mechanism. So does anyone here know exactly what blockchain is? Good, that's all right. Right, okay, you know what blockchain is. You know a bit about it's like, people say that blockchain will replace banking, right? Blockchain is at its simplest form, it's a record, it's a trusted record of a transaction that has taken place between two people. So the way blockchain is positioned is as potentially replacing things that we do like land registries. Because actually the fact that you have bought a piece of property from someone else is recorded in blockchain, which is like a kind of an internet mechanism, means that you don't need those other. This is the trusted source. And then banking, the record of transactions between individuals, is in some scenarios seen as no longer being needed. In banking you saw what was post Theresa May's comments about Brexit. That sort of flash crash, which was actually, do you remember that? Where the UK sterling, we had these massive fluctuations. And that was driven by trading algorithms, taking data from social media, interpreting it, that being picked up by other trading algorithms and all of that. So that side of sort of, investment banking, trading, that is already quite automated. Blockchain is replacing that sort of ledger function of banking. In some scenarios, they say that's going to have a profound effect on, the city and Docklands, all of those financial institutions. Do you want to say something more sensible about blockchain? Because, I don't pretend to understand.
Yeah. The key points are it's an ongoing audit trail.
Yeah.
No one can change it unless you put a counter record at the end of that line. The ways it's going to potentially be used in the city is to know your customer. You can find the instant source for truth, who's touched things, who's modified things. You can also integrate your suppliers into your supply chains because of the same mechanism, and it's of course the technology that underpins Bitcoin. So that's probably all I know.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. That's right. Yeah.
Hi, my name is John Saul. I'm from Islington, or I should say the newly born Triborough.
So you've got my old boss there.
It.
Brilliant. Okay.
So
Well, good luck with that.
I need to know how to get under. You can tell me.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you. That's fine. He's a lovely guy. Ed Gusser, he's a lovely guy. For the record.
The real question. From the IT technology point of view, you've got the three boroughs. Again, let's focus on the IT as opposed to everything to do with three organisations.
Yeah.
My concern is that there are going to be different, I suppose, there are going to be fears about how you deliver things. For example, Islington, is the most secure place, in the universe in terms of how they decided to deliver cocoa and various things like that. And you've got the other authorities that may not necessarily be that way. I have to be careful how I say things because I don't know who else is. But how are you then coping with the concerns of whether it's security, and so not so much about the applications, but it's the concerns of three individual authorities coming together, and one may be very security conscious and the other one may not be, and this is supposed to fit into a ICT shared service.
It's not easy, right? In fact, it's really hard. So particularly when you have those different cultures, and we massively do. Westminster is this kind of, we go on and do these great big £8 million procurements. Kensington is a terribly slowly iterative, don't take too much risk, and you have to, you come up with one policy for all three, and it's really hard. A really important thing to do is to have single heads of service. So that, these guys were right. When they wanted to bring adults, children's libraries together, the first thing they did was get a director of that service. And then that director does not want to deal with 3 ways of taking out library books or 3 ways of it. So if you've got a single CIO, I'm afraid with a single InfoSec head or IG lead, they're going to be motivated to have a single policy across the 3. So that is a really important starting point. And then you obviously have to get into the negotiation about how you are going to deal with information security. But we haven't got it right, okay? We really haven't got it right. We've majored on all of the collaboration aspects and the mobility and the flexibility, all those wonderful benefits of Office 365. I know some guys that are working with you on your tenancy and the security around that, what you're doing with multi-factor authentication and some of the data loss prevention and rights management and stuff. Yours is going to be better. But I think you need that single head of InfoSec to drive it. All of that sharing of services, and it all hangs on personal relationships at the end of the day. So it's then down to that person, Ed as the CIO, yourself maybe, to foster a good relationship with the account, so they trust you. And then when you say this is our policy, they'll believe you. So that's not much of an answer, is it? But that's the best I can do. Yeah.